Hey, hello and welcome. Welcome to the Command Suite. These are leadership conversations with senior level commanders and enlisted advisors. This recurring session at the end of every month is brought to you by the Talent Work Group, an executive search and talent advisory. You can visit our website to book any one of us for your next speaking engagement or conference. That being said, let's kick this off. Gentlemen, it's good to see you all again.
Good to be here, Josh.
Good to see you, Josh, Ron, Mike.
Yeah. So just as a brief introduction for anyone paying attention, for anyone out there, we've got four folks that served as, again, senior commanders within the military. We're going to do introductions here in just a minute, but we were all blessed to be part of what we called a command team or command suite. Commanders, they're senior enlisted advisors who tackled the problems and issues within their units. We all come from special operation backgrounds, and we've done this all the way around the world. So why don't we start with introductions? Craig?
Hey, thanks, Josh. Hey, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I really appreciate the opportunity to join this great group of guys and see what we can do to help provide some perspective and get back. I did about 28 years in the U.S. Marine Corps. Back in the days when I started, the Marine Corps did not have a special operations component, so I started out as an infantry officer and worked my way up through the ranks up to infantry battalion commander by the time I was a lieutenant colonel. I worked in reconnaissance, Marine reconnaissance, and did a couple of broadening tours with British Royal Marine Commandos. And then as the Marine Corps got into Special Operations Command after 9/11, I participated in an inaugural test pilot unit called Detachment 1, and then eventually finished up my career after serving some sentence in the Pentagon and then working with some Joint Special Operations folks over in MARSOC as the deputy commander. I retired about 5 years ago, been through a myriad of different experiences and learned a lot and have really gained a lot from perspective of other folks. And I hope to impart some of these lessons over to you all as well. Let me pass it over to Mike.
Hey, thanks, Craig. Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to echo Craig's thoughts. Really happy that you could join us tonight to hear what we have to say. So I was very fortunate enough to serve 29 years in the United States Army. I was a special operations aviator. Got to spend about 22 of those 29 years in operational units. Definitely blessed to serve with, our nation's great sons and daughters. Retired about 2 years ago. I was the CEO of a nonprofit UAS company in New York. And then I decided to make another change, and I'm currently the vice president for member services for Helicopter Association International. It's a trade association representing the international commercial helicopter industry. And definitely I like the nonprofit world and look forward to the discussion. I think I'm going to turn it over to Ron.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Good evening to everybody, or good afternoon if you're on the West Coast. The same thing, not only telling everybody else thank you, but I get the opportunity to join a group of great guys that we all share the commonality of not only serving in the military, but what we've done to transition civilian life and then give back what we can for you guys, exactly what we're doing right now. I retired out of the military about 4 years ago, was a command master chief, the highest level in naval special warfare, had spent 28 years of my 30 years in the career as a SEAL. Prior to that, I was 2 years as a corpsman or a medic. So as I started progressing through my career, normal everyday business till 9/11, like everybody else you're looking at, things accelerated. By the time I got done with my last deployment, I had about a year, finished up transitioning, retired, and then moved into civilian life. What I've learned in the military, you'll be hearing some of that. You'll be hearing comments from other guys, and hopefully that will help you navigate through what you may be dealing with, or if you have military people, it will help you understand what they can provide for you. I'm currently working for a well servicing company in training and development, so my skills had a direct correlation of moving from one field to the other. Josh, I'm going to let you close out the introductions.
Thanks, gentlemen. Hey, again, welcome everyone. This is an exciting opportunity. So my name is Joshua Johnson, also a veteran of special operations. I served 32 years, and so combined, we've got about 120 years of experience that we're looking to share with anyone that wants to pay attention. So I grew up in Army Special Forces. I was a Green Beret, primarily with 1st Special Forces Group, whose primary area of responsibility was Asia. Within that, I grew up on a Special Forces dive team, so I'm familiar with some of the language of the SEALs. So that's how Ron and I are able to communicate through this. But at the end of the time, I ended my my tour in the military as the Group Master Trainer at 1st Special Forces Group. And what a just a fantastic opportunity to be surrounded by the young and upcoming talent within the organization. I retired just about a year ago, and I'm now currently serving as the Director of Training and Leadership Development for West Shore Home. Again, just like Ron, easily transferable skills that I took from the military, and now I get the opportunity to develop young talent within West Shore Home. So that being said, we figured that the probably best conversation for all of us to have to start this off with is talking about how we view development and investment in training. I had a couple of opportunities in recent memory to talk to people about the amount of training that we do in the military. And just thinking about pre-deployment, pre-operations, we're talking 18 months before we go operational. So 75%, just based off that fact, off of a 6-month deployment, 75% of our time we involve in training, or involves training. And then when you actually move into that operational realm, you do rehearsals and practices, you work with your indigenous forces, you're talking with adjacent units. So really that level of training increases up to somewhere between 85% to 90% training versus operations. So my question is this, or at least my comments are this: how much are you investing in your organizations? Not necessarily the exact percentage, because it's never going to be what the military does, but how important does your organization feel that training is?
All right, I guess I'll jump in here to break the silence. Hey, Josh, I think that's a great question, and I can just speak from my limited experience in the nonprofit world. We are very small, lean organizations, so not unlike a SEAL team or a Special Forces operational detachment. We are one person deep in just about every field, and so it has been a challenge. But I think we have taken the mindset that you have to invest in people, and you have to let them go and do courses, do professional education. One, because it challenges them. I think it helps them create ownership in the company, that they see that you have a vested interest in their development. And a lot of times I think, that keeps them in the company, even though they may be looking to progress and grow in their career. If you continue to educate them and train them, I think they really see the value in the company and it cares for them. And I think people then, choose to stay with us. So we've made it a conscious choice, but it does come at a cost in a small organization, because you just don't have that person there, to do that work for 1 week to 2 weeks. And, in these challenging COVID times, things are moving quick, and that has an impact. I'd be interested to see how Ron and Craig have handled that.
So Mike, you hit on, even just reemphasize what Josh was putting out. The problem with training and development to take a look at is there's no return on investment that you can look at and verify. If you produce a piece of equipment, you can see the end state. When you're developing training people, you really don't see the end state until it comes to the end, whether you're trying to accomplish your mission, build something, or provide a service. But when you take a look at return on investment, when you have happy employees, they want to stay with the company, and they're doing very well, that's your return on investment. And companies that do that extremely well will always have the best employees. Craig, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And great points by all. I'd like to kind of spin off of one of Mike's topics as well. Yes, give them the time and invest in that. A lot of these courses and certificate trainings that we send our folks to. I work in a small defense and government contracting firm here in Dallas Fort Worth. Sometimes the investment could be over 2 weeks, and sometimes it's not inexpensive. Not only take the time, take the risk, invest in that, but leave them alone. And one thing I think we all learned last year by being kind of sequestered in by the pandemic and having to work remote is that you really never get away from it now, because we're always on one of these things. We're talking to each other. We're always working. And so that translates over. I've seen it happen when you're in courses, people run outside or they're looking under their phone and they're checking on things at work. I think one of the things that I learned the most in the last couple of years is, hey, when somebody's going off and doing that, one of my subordinates or somebody else in the company that may be a peer, hey, listen, don't worry about anything. Check in when you can at the end of the day, but concentrate on what you're doing so you can get the most out of the training. We get the most out of you when you get back. Back over to Josh.
Man, there were some really good comments here. A couple of them that I want to dive into if you guys are cool with this. First off, investing in your people. You're absolutely right. Training costs the organization, revenue. You're pulling someone out of that revenue stream. They're no longer building whatever widget it is. In my case, it's installing showers and baths or out selling those. But I heard an interesting phrase a while back. It was, hey, people that jam people into the job without being properly trained are stepping over dollars to save pennies. And that thing has rung true the more and more we see our return on investment. So in my particular company, we training for our sales team was initially 2 weeks long. It was run at the local level. We took the initiative to expand it out by a week, really try to provide context to what the sales force was learning and apply that to the product. And we saw an immediate return. We saw our NSLI grow. We saw our revenues increase. And so, we took somebody out of the field. They didn't run leads for a week longer than they had, but that incremental increase in money that we were able to make has just been fantastic. The other point that I wanted to bring up, and I want someone to jump on this, isolating your people from their daily tasks so that they can train and learn how to do their tasks better. All of us in special operations know what it means to go into isolation. Pull yourself away. You're not distracted by anything. You have nothing but time to plan your mission, your operation, work on the logistics, work on the supply chain, work on communications, and be free from all distractions so that you can make sure that what you're doing is your priority. I'm sure everyone has seen, and anyone that's listening to this, we absolutely love it if you'd weigh in on this in the comment section. We have seen people show up for training and leave every 5 minutes to answer a text. So now you've taken them out of the revenue stream. You've paid for them to go somewhere to train. They're not training, and they're going to return to you without the benefits of what they've had. So anyone want to comment on that?
I'll jump in quickly. I actually kind of touched on this a little bit in my opening comments, but I would say if you plan ahead with your targeted employee, sit down with that person's area of responsibility, his employees, and then map out the time in which that person is going to be away, and then build in continuity plans to say, listen, don't worry about what these things that are up on the docket that we're looking to do, these proposals that might be due, or these projects that have some deadlines. Here are the steps that we're going to be taking to do this. Here's the people that we have to dive back into in the case we need something. And in case of emergency, we'll get to you. But otherwise, focus on the task at hand. What we really need is that increased knowledge, that increased capability that you have from this great training that you're going to go to.
So Josh, I want to add one more thing, and it's everything we're talking about. Like when I take oil and gas, the primary reason we send people to that training is risk. And when I say risk, that could cost somebody their life, environmental issues. So everything when you're talking about training, and it ties back into one of these comments, Mr. George on LinkedIn, even if you can't spend much money, taking the time to mentor and coach pays huge dividends. Training doesn't stop when you're going into a classroom. It doesn't stop when you come out. It is a living thing that is absorbed by a person. And when you have a mentor and a coach and that relationship is built up, the training goes both ways. If you are a small company and you are still teaching your employees how you want to do business, that's learning. I'll turn it back over to you, Josh.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Mike commented that he just read a recent article that from Forbes saying that somewhere around $366 billion a year is spent in corporate training. There it is up on the screen. Yet most of this fails. What is it that we saw within the military, or what is it that you're seeing now within the organization? What made us successful in our training, and what do you see is the cause for failure in training programs?
I'll take a stab at that. I think that's a really, really interesting point. I think one of the things that we all had in the military, which is hard to create in the civilian world, is that unity of purpose, that everyone is looking as a true team sport for the betterment of the organization ahead of their own personal interests. And so I think one of the challenges in leader development is to get everyone in the organization to understand that unity of purpose and that long-term vision. And really it's selfless service. And I think as you look to develop your leaders, there's all of those management functions, systems and process, but really separating that into the leadership side, the human interaction, where you have to show people that you care about them, ahead of your own interests, and that you place trust in them. And I sort of define trust as a belief in someone's competence, reliability, motivation, and integrity. And I use that sort of as a leadership framework. But I'd be interested to hear what you all think on it.
Ron mentioned something about in-state, and I think that is something we're always working towards, some type of goal in the military. We don't spend our entire careers in one single unit for one single purpose. We're always moving around. We advance and we build new teams. So in that finite period of time when you're building a purpose statement, like Mike just talked about, and looking at the end state there, you'll have to do with less at some point during that in order to make these investments to get the type of knowledge and skills and capability that you need, so that you can bring it together at the right time to finish these preparations. Then when it's time to perform, whether you're on deployment or you're involved in some type of evaluation or some type of mission, then you're all ready to go. So that could be one indicator as to why the military has some advantage. The other issue too is that we all want to get better and we all want to advance, and you're evaluated on that, and it counts towards your promotion potential. So it may seem like a daunting task to you at the time if you're going through some of this training, but I guarantee you some of your seniors on the officer and the enlisted side and your peers want you to go through this training, and they want to get you back into your role, because you will bring new tools into that, and that's going to benefit the whole team. And then through that experience, the training gives you only a portion of it, that OJT and then working through what you're going to be performing with that team is going to round that out, and then it's going to make the team even stronger.
Yep, all great points. The one that I wanted to bring was
Craig. I'm going to add on to what talked about vision and alignment of the company. You know what your vision is because it's going to be your mission statement of what you want to accomplish as an organization or company. But if that alignment doesn't go from the top down to the bottom and that training directed to fill in those gaps, there's probably why there's a lot of failure. There was one comment is just checking the blocks. I've seen organizations, even the military did it, when they would do online training, you would go in, fill it out, take a little quiz and check a block. Really did nothing. The ground truth when you start taking a look at training and how do you measure it? Communication. How do you know whether your training was effective? Talk to your people, understand your people, see what they're doing, help them out. And then if you have to adjust your training to that level, you do that. Josh?
Yeah, I apologize for trying to step over you. There's some really good points that have been brought up. The one that I wanted to add to it was, as you're training a new task, if leadership doesn't understand that task, they're going to be quick to discount it. So you need to train at the appropriate level for the appropriate task. If it's a new task to the organization, you need to get the key stakeholders bought in, vested, have them build the momentum behind the problem set, provide training to those that are going to do it, but then have those key leaders hold them accountable to the new information and the new tasks that they have. So we've got a couple of really good comments. I just wanted to kind of go through the list and add to it. Going back to, isolation, Cassandra Cruz said, hey, plan for continuity so that a person is out of training can focus on that training. And that's absolutely right. One of the things that we're trying to do at West Shore Home is build a bench of qualified people so that we can cover up versus cover down. Managers have a job to do. And if they're having to do, a first line supervisor's job as well, that hurts. But what a great opportunity to take someone, put them into that leadership position, one level for where they normally operate, give them the experience, give you the opportunity to do an evaluation, but absolutely isolate whoever it is that you've pulled from the job and have them start training. Stephen Hartz added in that within the healthcare realm, they do retreats. And offsites are a fantastic way to do it. Get away from it, shut the phones off, focus on what you're doing. And that's right in line with what we were talking about, going into isolation. An isolation facility like physically pulled you away from any of the distractions that you could put that function on. Is that feasible, in the corporate world? No. Does it make sense in the corporate world? Probably not. But if you can isolate a block of time, have people leave their phones outside. Don't be checking emails and just focus on what that problem set is or what that new task is, and drive on. Any comments?
Hey, Josh, just one on that. And I think it's a great idea. And some of the things that translate in the civilian world, at least in my experience recently, is just team building events. And it doesn't have to be, going on a monster hike up to the top of Pikes Peak. It could be going to Top Golf. It could be playing some type of sport or just doing some problem solving type drills with your folks, and then putting some folks in other people's positions. And that is a way to focus inward. Your isolation may not be exactly as we experienced it and would expect it in the military world, but it gives us time to kind of introspect, look at each other, and then figure out how we can, better work ourselves to make the others around us better.
Hey, if I could, I want to take a stab at a question from Jonathan Villarreal, where he asked about, when small companies, where you don't have the depth in a particular function, what controls can you put in place, for people to attend? One of the things that we've done is that cross-functional training. So obviously in the military, very, very, very big, every individual needs to have some level of competency and proficiency in someone else's skill. And so we do the same kinds of things. And really the benefit to that is it helps people understand at a human level the challenges of someone else's role. And I think what that does is it really builds synergy. And so, we have an operations department. We have somebody who specializes in maintenance. We have somebody who specializes in safety, someone who specializes in technology, education, training, regulations. But a lot of times, we attack everything very collaboratively. So when one person goes off for professional education, vacation, you name it, that other person has at least a base understanding and knowledge of their tasks. And that does a number of things. It allows them to complement the actions that people aren't working in stovepipe. It gives them a appreciation for some of the other person's challenges. It enables them to put on a different lens. And I think it really, makes the organization better.
I like what you said there, Mike, where you've talking that cross-functionality and being able to cover down. Every organization has supporting organizations. Internal communications is working with training is working with operations. Someone is going to have a base of knowledge that they should be able to reach in. And, Jonathan, you're absolutely right. Small organizations, that's tough to cover down on. Ron and I can speak specifically about, living in small organizations. In my case, a 12-person ODA, alone and unafraid in some foreign country, you pull one guy out, you're hurting, right? You're hurting for certain. But, back to Mike's point, there was always that cross-training that made that capable. Every medic had to know exactly how to operate a radio. Every engineer knew how to shoot every gun that was on the ODA, and everybody understood how to give at least a basic level, training class in whatever function that we were working on, and it made us all capable of doing that coverage. So if you've got a single point of failure within an organization, in my opinion, that's an organizational change that you need to address. Have some type of cross coverage, have some type of cross functionality, and be able to cover down on that. If that individual who's that single point of failure gets abducted by aliens, hit by a bus, poached to another company, what are you going to do? If you can't lose someone for a week of training, what are you going to do when you lose someone out of that position? So, Jonathan, something absolutely to take a look at, and that cross functionality is probably a real good one. Gents?
So a couple of things to add that I'm seeing a common theme between leadership. How do you control people and make them attend training, and how do you measure it? When you take a look at training first, and it was discussed earlier, you got to have 100% buy-in from the boss. If I were to go to Josh and say, sir, we need to shut the company down, we need to do mandatory training, I had better have buy-in from the boss, and then you give enough advance notice to every one of your employees, and you shut things down, and you focus on that training. Everything from taking the cell phones out, whiteboards are a tool that gets away from electronics, gets people away from the screen, and then you measure that. And then you can constantly follow up and see where people are at in the process. As far as executives, they're just as human as you and I and need that time to train and develop. They will also need that time allocated in their schedule. So training in advance, conducting the training, get everybody involved, and then measure it. Turning it back over.
Jess, we got a comment from Paxara that says, it's his experience that if an organization's senior leadership isn't involved in training, it's rarely going to take priority. I think the four of us are in a unique position to address that. So why don't we start with Craig? You were the deputy commander of MARSOC. How did you prioritize training?
Yeah, I think that really has to be embraced by the commander and at the command level, and it really has to be forced through accountability down to your subordinate commanders and your subordinate leaders as to why that is important. And you even have to take steps as to have regular briefs on it and why it's important. So when we're talking about this entire talent war concept here, you certainly need to look down at the very lowest level, whether it's military, whether it's civilian, because you have the folks that are on the pointy end of the spear, but you also have folks that do the support and often called enablers. But oftentimes some of the training and investment that you need for those enablers and those support folks are even more acute, more technical, and require a bit more investment. So from the command team, it's just got to be solid. The executives, the CEOs, the COOs, they got to get out. They got to see these people. They need to make time within their own schedule to visit with these units, especially these large companies that are out there, and ensure that it's demonstrated through not only word but deed that it is important. So I think it's a very active role in ensuring that this is demonstrated from the top down that it's important.
Hey, if we can, I'd like to turn this over to Ron right quick. Ron, will you do our viewing audience a favor? Explain what a command team is and explain what a senior enlisted advisor does, and then build off of what Craig said. How did you, as a senior enlisted advisor, support the commander's decision to prioritize training?
So answering the first question, when you take the command team, you could break it down even by civilian terms as your CEO. We had a commanding officer. We had an executive officer, but I would almost put that as your chief financial officer because they were responsible for the money and the budget and advising the commander. We had a COO that was typically not in the command suite, but was critical, and your senior enlisted advisor. So when you take the three gentlemen at the top in that C-suite element, they're making all the decisions. But the military learned very quickly that if they wanted to get the ground truth, influence, the senior enlisted was developed and implemented in the military. So when you take this command team, it'll boil down to those three people, your commanding officer, the executive officer, and the senior enlisted. You don't see a lot of structure like that, and we'll have people act in that realm. The big part is everybody communicating to get to the ground truth of what needs to be accomplished. How that pertained to my last job assignment, I had my captain and 06 and myself who were in charge of the whole West Coast, every team deploying. And what it boiled down to was we had a training command, we had SEAL teams, we had support elements, there was a span of control, and lots of meetings at those levels to make sure that everybody was on the same sheet of music with the mission and execution. I hope that answered your question, Josh.
Absolutely. Mike, did you want to build on that?
Yeah, no, I do. So as you said, there's sort of been a common theme here, senior leaders in corporate organizations supporting the education and training of subordinates. But what I want to hit on is really, how important it is for senior executives to continue with professional education, right? One thing about the military, combat's the great equalizer. You had to be prepared. So as a senior leader, if I was going to fly a mission, I had to make sure I was proficient in that aircraft. In the corporate world, I think it's just as important. Technology is changing things so quickly that for a chief operating officer, a chief financial officer, chief of staff, or chief executive officer, look and search out those professional education courses where you get a chance to network and interface with your peers, whether they're in the same industry or a different industry, because I think that's very important to continue, to gain a competitive advantage. If you just think, hey, our profit and loss statement's good, we're doing well, we've got, market share, supply, demand, whatever, key performance measurement you have, I would challenge you to, get out there and look for other ways to continue to grow, because you could have a competitive advantage one day and you could lose it the next.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Carl Hughes brought something up, Carl and David, and I think we should address both of these. Carl says, hey, cross-training is essential in small teams and companies, but for larger corporations, that may not be a good fit. And then to add on that, tough to cover down in large companies who have specialized skills-based teams to keep delivery quality at its highest point. I would agree with Glenn that, hey, for my company, for West Shore Home, my sales force can't install, right? And my installers more than likely can't sell. But within those organizations, that's where we have that cross coverage. So we have two product lines, shower bath, window and door. And we've got several of our installers that are capable of installing both. At the same time, we have On our sales side, we're broken down into sales teams. And if somebody pulls out, somebody gets sick, somebody's not covering, one team can cover down on the other. So you're absolutely right. Specialized teams, not going to be able to do cross coverage. You're going to have to build that capability within those teams. And then to Carl, I personally, I would disagree. I think cross training within larger organizations does two things. One of the things that we do is we put our install manager into our sales meeting, and his ability to say, hey, when you guys are selling this to the customer, this is what my guys have to do. And if you don't understand the capabilities or if you don't understand the capabilities of the install team, you may be over-promising on something that we can't deliver. And that conversation, just melding those two organizations together, those two specialized teams together, has created a common understanding of the capabilities of the company and presents a much better product to the customer.
Yeah, I agree with you, Josh. And Carl Houston just put up a comment there that really echoes that. It may not be training per se, but it's exposure, and it creates that shared consciousness, shared understanding of the organization. And it puts people in different departments, have an understanding of what that other department does. And, that just gives you that broader understanding and bigger picture, so you can see things from a different lens. So I absolutely agree with Carl. May not be, training per se, but it is definitely education and exposure. And that's really, it's team building, right? And in that aspect, you get to understand what that other person on the team's role is, because, everyone's going to be important in that organization.
One of the comments earlier talked about coaching opportunities versus formalized training. And then they asked, what are your thoughts on formalized training versus OJT versus, being able to get outside? I don't think there's a one size fits all. I think you absolutely have to have a multi-pronged approach to any problem set. OJT will give you some experience into it. Formalized training will give you the understanding, the in-depth understanding of whatever that task happens to be. And mentorship. I cannot stress mentorship enough. Get somebody an assigned best friend at work. Hey, if you have a question, this is the person to call. Talk to them, lay out what problems you're having, lay out what solutions you think are appropriate, and have them bounce it off of somebody. Has anybody else implemented mentorship programs within their organization?
Yeah, Josh, we have, but it goes back down to buy-in. Like when I take the mentor-mentee relationship, you can write it out as policy as a company, but you have to make sure that it goes both ways. So we always screen, and I will say the training piece, are we finding the right mentor? So we're bringing in new people, that person has the capability to train that new person, and then that relationship can build from there.
We always did this, back in the teams. You vetted people that you knew were going to be the emerging leaders, and you started using them as your mentors, and it became, a secondary vetting situation. The guy's great. He does his job, but he's also willing to spend that extra bit to get somebody up to build them that capability. We're doing that exact same thing, in my organization now, and you see it, and then you see people saying, "Hey, you know what? If you need a little help, I'd love to offer it." And because they see, hey, so-and-so is the go-to person when it comes to training. Now so-and-so just got promoted. And when you incentivize people acting as mentors or coaches, it starts to spread. Dave, you're asking about changing a corporate culture. In my opinion, it's incentivize those that are doing the right things, but those that are doing the right things to help others.
To that point, one of the things that we talk about in the military, and we see this every 2 to 3 years, is the commander sets the tone. Well, it's not just the commander. Ron and Josh hit on it. It's the command team, and depends on which service you're in or what MOS that you're in the infantry. Obviously, you have your commanding officer and the senior enlisted advisor or the command sergeant major. a lot of us have included in there the chaplain, and not just for spiritual purposes, but for also for the moral well-being and that type of confidence and comfort that can be provided down as well. And the same thing on the infantry side. Mike can talk about this on the aviation side. Certainly technical mentor available, but the infantry battalion weapons officers, or as we call them, the gunners. So you have that team that's an expanded power group that can go down to various sects within the organization and provide that type of mentor, specific type of mentoring that can clue in and key in on the right areas. What I would say, as far as David Glenn's comment there about the culture, and when you set that tone from the top and it permeates down, it still requires, regardless of the size of the organization, whether it's a small business in the Dallas-Fort Worth area or if it's a large business somewhere in Palm Beach, Florida, you have to be out and about, and you have to be visible. And it might be, like Mike, I think, mentioned earlier, very formal communications that are snippets that go out there and engage, and then also highlight great jobs that other people are doing. And that type of thing can affect the culture, certainly, and also show that individuals, it pays to step up, take leadership, and also provide their own brand of strength across the company.
Yeah, thanks, sir. That's fantastic. If we can just roll right back to Carl, he brings up another couple of points that I just thought would be super beneficial as we get ready to close this session out. Shadowing our lead quality teams. I think that's right in line with what we're talking about when it comes to the mentorship programs. And then, exposure is not cross-training. It's simply exposure. He brings up a valid point, but oftentimes exposure will drive operations within a specified, a specialty team. I talked a little bit about, having our install manager in with our sales folks, just to do that. And the way that I always thought about this, and I really tried to focus on it while I was in the military, and it's been just a very easy translation, is, hey, who's affecting me? What is it that I'm expected to do? And what is it that my result, or what will my results, or who will my results affect on the backside? Those are the bookends that I really need to build that relationship with, so that I understand what they're doing and why they're providing that to me, the why being important, what it is that I need to provide to the next one in that chain. So, exposure, absolutely essential, and understanding how those departments work. And it's not just understanding how they work, it's why they work and how they support that. Gents?
We talked a lot about mentorship here, and one thing I think it's very important for everyone to understand is, the differences between teaching, coaching, counseling, and mentorship. And I think all four, have a place in an organization for leaders, to work with their subordinates. There's some tasks you're just going to need to teach them. There's some things you're going to need to coach them through how they improve. Obviously, counseling, performance reviews is incredibly important, to discuss what was done well and what are opportunities for greater growth. And then, mentorship is really that two-way personal relationship. So I think as we talk a little bit about mentorship, I think you have to add, teaching, coaching, counseling, and mentorship all in one sort of, package.
Mike, I agree, and to spin off on that too, getting feedback I think is important. You hit on it there briefly on the command team side of that. I always love to have the feedback in the Marine Corps. You'd have to go through this command climate survey so you can get that. A lot of people felt that they were a little bit lip service and maybe forced on you, but frankly, you would get some good feedback on that. Then you can feed that back into your chain of command and then address it with the unit at large, and also focus in on very key areas with your subordinate leaders. And I find that the exact same applicability in the civilian world as well. For those military folks that are thinking about or that are about to transition, trying to get into the civilian workforce now, stick to what you know. Do what you do. You may not have to rebrand what you're doing. You'll get response. People do want to hear what you have to say and your methods and how you do it. And then you can figure out how you need to adjust your message based on, the type of environment that you're existing in now. Over to you, gents.
I think we're about to the point that we need to start wrapping this up. So why don't we just go around the horn? We'll start with Ron and work our way back to me. Any closing comments you have on tonight's session?
No, but we only talked about one subject, and that was training that led to leadership, mentorship, coaching, availability. So please continue to listen to us. We will be able to expand on these topics a little more in depth. Thank you for joining us. I'll turn it over to Mike.
Yeah, no, gentlemen, thanks for the conversation. It, makes me think about what I'm doing currently in my role and how I can improve. So I love the conversation. Last thing I'll say is to the gentleman who asked, how do you change culture? One person at a time. If that's what it takes, you do it one person at a time, because culture is everything in organization. So I really like that question. Craig, to you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And thanks to all you gentlemen. Really, I always take away something every time we're together and we're talking about these things. And Ron hit it. What people in the audience don't know is that we've all prepared a couple of different questions and topics to look at. So now we have another 2 months worth of material, thankfully. So I think we're off to a great start here. We really appreciate the feedback. I'm learning a lot just by looking at the comments and the questions coming in. I do have to do a shout out. I know we have a couple of minutes, but one of the guys that was up on the comments board was a guy named Andrew Cece, and we served together back in Camp Pendleton years ago, and did a couple of combat deployments with me, and his comment said something to the effect that complacency kills. Well, I think we all know, and you can apply this from where we have been, all of us have been, and then translate it forward. The 4 C's. Certainly, you have competence in your job. You should know you're hired and you're doing this for a reason. So that leads to a lot of confidence. What you got to guard against, as Andrew said, is that complacency, because if you get to the complacency part and it all starts to go wrong, then you go into catastrophe. And that, as I was brought up through the military, those are the 4 C's drilled in and beaten into our head. And every time I hear those words, that resonates with me. And that's some things I always try to inculcate down to my leaders, but also remind myself too as well. So great session, great comments on the side, and great perspective from all you true professionals. Thank you, gentlemen.
Gentlemen, as it was while we were in uniform, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you. Absolutely able to carry something personally out of this. I just want to do a quick plug. If you've not had the opportunity to read the Talent War Group, most of what we talk about is covered in there. They really focus on being a generalist in a time where specialism is required. You've got to know your job. You've got to be very good at it. But I always used to tell people, and we were talking about this today at my work, in any organization, there's 3 jobs: my job, our job, and his job. I know what I have to be able to do. At some point, there's going to be some of those undefined or unassigned tasks that need to get done so the team can move forward. And then I'm going to look around and I'm going to see, somebody within my team or somebody within another organization that could use my help. When those 3 jobs are done, mine, ours, his, or hers, that's when the day's done. So, you may have very, very specific tasks, but I guarantee there's something that you can do that can help out somebody within the organization. And the last thing I'd like to do is plug the Jedburgh podcast with Fran, and I'm going to butcher this last name, Fran. I apologize for this. Rasa, I'm not even going to try it. Somebody else can help me out with that. But his next podcast is very much focused on, how to be a generalist in an organization that requires specialty. So, gentlemen, I really appreciate the time, and we'll close it there. Anyone that paid attention through LinkedIn, we look forward to seeing you at the end of next month.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, James.